The Euston Arch was built in 1838. It dominated the entrance to Euston Station, the world's first railway terminus. For over a century, it symbolised the strength and confidence of the railway age. The biggest Doric arch ever built in Britain, it was erected with state-of-the-art engineering, using an iron and brick frame on which were hung thousands of tons of carved stone. But in 1961, British Railways announced the arch was to be demolished to make way for a new modern station. Despite fierce opposition, the arch came down after the then Prime Minister Harold Macmillan refused to save it. For 20 years, the architectural historian Dan Cruikshank has been hunting the arch's remains. In 1993, filming with 1 foot in the past, he tracked down some minor stones to a garden in Bromley in Kent. But the most sensational find was still to come. A 1 foot in the past viewer who had seen that programme led Dan Cruikshank to the River Lee in East London, where thousands of tons of the arch had been used to fill in a great hole in the riverbed over 30 years ago. The quest for the arch had come to a triumphant end. Fired by his discovery, Dan Cruikshank set about realising his lifelong dream.
Okay, let me bring you up to date with...
Last week, a trust composed of architects, engineers and conservationists met to plan strategy. Their aim, to raise and rebuild the Euston Arch.
We want to right a tremendous wrong. We're dealing here with almost a kind of Arthurian legend, aren't we? The rediscovery of most of the stones below water in the River Lee. It's a most extraordinary story. And then to not use them would seem peculiar and wrong. It was one of the most important buildings of the 19th century. And with the rediscovery of the stones, it seems almost natural and logical that we should want to put it back together again.
Now, I don't think anyone would think of rebuilding it if they weren't able to get hold of some of the old stones. There's something about having the old stones which makes it seem like a reasonable proposition. Whereas I think if you just rebuilding it from scratch, I'm not sure the will would be there.
The Trust estimates that at least 4,000 tons of stones from the arch lie on the riverbed. But can they be retrieved? The divers who brought up last year's fragment are optimistic.
The stones would be quite straightforward to do as an operation. Firstly, we would carry out an extensive survey of the area and make sure we map the extent of the works. Secondly, we would remove any of the residual debris, such as prams, bedsteads, that sort of stuff. Thirdly, we would carry out underwater water dredging or airlifting operations to remove the silt from the stones. And then fourthly, we would attach strops and remove the stones from the riverbed.
And the proposed site? Right in front of the modern Euston Station, at present masked by an office block in front of which a war memorial stands marooned.
We're standing in front of Euston Station. Now, the arch originally stood to the north, buried in the bowels of the existing station. We can't get at the site, can't rebuild it on the original site. What we can do, and what we must do, is rebuild it here. The obelisk is a wonderful thing, but currently simply works as a roundabout, the bus park. So that will be improved by being set back slightly in the forecourt behind us. So we have the arch here doing its original job, forming a triumphal entrance to Euston and to the north of England, standing here, flanked by these two excellent lodges, later, but the right scale, the right architecture. The whole thing would work when viewed from Euston Road as a splendid piece of architecture. The arch, the lodges, fantastic.
The construction of the Euston Arch is extremely well documented. As well as paintings like this, plans and technical drawings survive. New stones could be cut to replace those lost or badly damaged. But is the right kind of stone still available? Last week, Dan Cruikshank went to Yorkshire to find a quarry still cutting the same stone as was used to build the Euston Arch.
This is Bramley Fall stone, which is quite a highly coloured grit stone. I would suspect that the material that was used was from somewhere around here in a similar strata, but with as many of these sort of buildings, possibly not in this particular hole, but I would say certainly in this strata, the geographical strata, and out of this type of material.
The Euston Arch took nearly 2 years to build. Modern technology would reduce the time for both cutting and carving to a fraction of the original.
Of course, how feasible is it to make the components of this great Doric arch today to the standards at which they were made in the 1830s?
Well, modern technology allows us to carry out this work within, for a component of this size, within 2 days.
Right,
whereas 150 years ago, this would take us 2 weeks to do.
So how much would all this cost? The Trust has been doing its sums.
I've measured, if you like, the amount of stone that Hardwick took to build the arch, and I've come up with a figure just for the stonework of 1.5 million. But it doesn't end there, simply because you have to have a scaffolding and a tower crane, a steel framework, or whatever the framework is going to be, professional fees. Right. So we arrive at a figure, including the dreaded VAT, of just over 3 million.
An application to the National Lottery Heritage Fund is the next step. Permission to build is still to be obtained from Railtrack, the present owner of the site. Excavation, site clearance and retrieval of the stones from the river would take the final cost up to between £4 and £5 million. Enough, say, for about a third of the Churchill papers. Now it's for the Heritage Lottery Fund to decide.